This is Hidden, a podcast about things unknown.
Growing Sumac, like why you decided to grow it, and about how meeting Larry and Larry telling you that if you want to help the basket weavers, this is the best way, and
What you are hearing in the background is the voice of Rebecca Stoneman, who assisted on a video project in 2018. The video project has not been completed. She is prepping Steve Tanner, resident of Price, Utah, for the video. This episode is about two men, one living in Utah and one living in New Mexico, who set out to not only protect, but cultivate and educate on a needed resource which plays a major role in southwestern United States art and culture. The resource is sumac, and the art is basketry.
So it's just all of that. You got it?
Well, Larry started us.
Steve Tanner grew up in the La Salle Mountains in Utah. In his younger years, he worked as a horse wrangler for the late film director John Ford in Monument Valley. According to Steve, at the time, there were no roads in the valley, and it was quite comical with some new actors from Hollywood riding horses for their first time. Steve took interest in sumac from now longtime acquaintance and friend Larry Dalrymple. Larry lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
My name is Steve Tanner. I'm 75 years old. Been doing this with the sumac for over 20 years. Larry Dalrymple, who is an author of many books on basketry and is an authority, got me interested, and whatever I've accomplished since then is his fault. Because he said it's a lot of work. He showed me it was a lot of work and it didn't deter me, and so we used to go into Emery County and all over Carbon County and find the sumac and prepare it for the following year, because there was only so much growth and it had never been promoted through the weavers hadn't been up here and cut very much. There was 2 or 3 places they cut here, and the rest of it they couldn't get on private property because nobody wanted them on it. Well, so I decided I would go on it and cultivate it the best I knew how, and learned that it was easier to raise my own and cut away part of the plant so you could get to it, and I had a lot less bloody places on my arms because I had pruned it away where I could get into the plants to get to the quality materials. We have several different varieties here. I have one plant. Well, all these plants that are in the rows we got from Utah State many years ago. One of them got identified to me because we had a weaver come in here. I do not remember her first name, but she's the family of Mini Mules in Mini Farms is where she lives. And she said it was mountain sumac because it's instead of being straight, it's very weavy. if that's the proper term, is crooked. And the weavers, some of the weavers puts it in the foundation and cinches it down. The compression on it makes the basket extremely rigid. And it doesn't have much flexibility to it, which is great if you're handling the baskets. You want one that won't come apart on you and won't shatter, because when they start to age, they do get a little more, they get weakened from over time, like everything else, I guess it is.
For centuries going back, sumac, along with many other natural desert resources, were part of everyday life for native people of the Southwest. Basketry was a household item for native peoples, and not only lent itself to storytelling, but also ceremony. The designs and colors, some with added decoration, make each basket unique in its own.
Yeah. You know, this is what the weavers would do on the back. Only it would be a big one, and they would carry it on their back for gathering or whatever. The women would hang it over this side of the horse and one over the other side of the horse. And oftentimes there'd be a young baby in one side of it, because it's, much bigger basket, and camp equipment on the other side. And as time went on, they then started to put these things like this on it with buckskin and with baking powder cans that have been cut into these little tinklers. Larry Dalrymple. It's always a question that people ask of other people, and that I do of other people also. And sometimes we really have a hard time identifying it, but exactly what it was. But to start, I have a degree in world history and a master's in world history and Latin American history. And so I really don't have any degrees in Native American art and basketry, which I became so interested in. But I did have a lot of the skills that I had learned in those other histories. Early on, I had a lot of problem sleeping. It was often, and after the kids were in bed and so on, and I used to sit up at night and read. And this group of books, it was written by the Smithsonian in the 1980s. There are 20 of them on different tribes, their baskets, and so on. And being a historian, I just started reading these books. So this is my Bible, and it's really where I learned so much and developed an interest with basketry. Also, I came from a small town in Idaho, southern Idaho, and then grew up predominantly in Ogden, Utah. But we spent a lot of time out in the desert at Promontory Point, which has now been, has become a very important site for early inhabitation and so on. A relative that, a brother-in-law who was a deer hunter, and would take hides up to a Shoshone weaver who could make 4 pair of moccasins from a good hide and bead them. And she would give him one pair of moccasins for the hide. And so I grew up with this older brother-in-law, providing the family with moccasins, which instead of other things for shoes, and that certainly interested me. And my dad loved alcohol, and he was a wonderful storyteller, and I was just fascinated. Oftentimes his stories, kind of revolved around drinking, but nonetheless they were so interesting. And so that's really the way that I became fascinated with baskets. A more contemporary thing was on a trip from Mexico in '74. I came back, I was driving with my family. We came back through southern Arizona, and I noticed all of the baskets that were being made there in the stores and so on, among the what was referred to as the Papago and the Pima at that time. Now it's the Tohono and the Okemo O'odham is what they prefer for their designation. And I knew that basketry was an extremely old art, but I didn't know that it was still being made, and that really fascinated me. And it still does today in anything that you see. Something that's ages old and then still being produced in a way is very exciting to me. And so all of these things were the things that made me fascinated with basketry. I thought today that maybe we could start by talking about plants and the materials. If I were teaching a class about people who are interested in basketry, I would not start them out with some sumac, for example, that I had gathered and have them learning how to coil and to do this. No. The first things I would do is identify the kinds of plants, sumac and other plants, that they're going to need for this class. Then we've got to go out and we've got to find them ourselves, and we've got to test them, and we've got to see whether they're ready to be used, and we've got to do those sorts of things so that they really have an understanding of the plant material. And I think that's one of the things that is going to be difficult with basketry in the future, is that it's just a lot of hard work before you even sit down to do anything regarding a basket. My own calculation that I've thought is probably if you spend 100 hours on a basket, 75 of those hours is in planning, cutting, finding out where to cut, preparing, and processing materials. 25% is weaving the basket. So let's say you wove a basket that you were going to sell, and it took you a month. It's then taken you several months with all of the other stuff. It's a process that is very complicated. And we also have to remember, weavers do not sit down and just weave a basket. They have their children, they have their house to take care of. In today's world, they're working, so when they are weaving and they spend 80 hours, it may be over weeks that it's taking them. In the past, that was not the case because it was a slower lifestyle and things were very, very different. So the first thing I think I would like to do is to have people understand something about the plants themselves. Don't worry about biology. Don't worry about the technical name and all of these sorts of things. Let's just look at the plants and how they react and how they feel. I did something here today. This is some sumac from my yard, and these are not very good examples. And I have one here, I don't know, have you ever tried splitting them yourself? Well, I started this one. It's, you hold it here, pull, really pulling. And this here, I'm working to split. Sometimes I have to put more pressure on this, sometimes I have to do this to keep it splitting. But now, I'm still working. Okay, that's as far as it went. This sumac branch, we've had a first frost. This sumac branch is still workable for a weaver who's had a lot of experience, but it's really not very good sumac. And there's a number of reasons. Better in the spring when it's fresh and the plants are more pliable, because she's going to have to peel this. And if I could see a little bit better, you chew this end. And I can't hear. I've got it. And you have the skin. That broke off. It is, but when it's good, you just pull it down. It just immediately comes. This, anybody can do this at the right time. And you think, oh, this is such a complicated thing. And it is a complicated thing at this time because this isn't real good material. But at the right time, it's unbelievably easy.
But we have some with red bark, some with white bark, and I don't know how to identify the other than by the color of the bark. And sometimes some of the rods are rather red inside, and I think that if we had enough weavers come up here, they'd probably cut the ones they like, and we've had a few weavers come in.
Hey, is Rus trilobata, is it a kind of Rus trilobata?
Yes, it is. And it has a berry that you can eat, and they make pudding out of it, and they make drinks out of it. It requires an immense amount of sugar because it is really sour.
Sumac, generally speaking, is popular among the Southern Paiutes, among the Navajo, among the Western Apache, and we call them Western Apache because there's several tribes of Apaches. The Mescalero, Chiricahua, they are, different tribes, and they're more easterly. So we refer to White River and San Carlos as Western Apache. And there's a difference oftentimes in the basketry between the two with the materials. A lot of people don't recognize that. So, generally those are just kind of the materials. And we could go through California the same way, and we could go through some of the others. But that's a good starting point. Now the thing is to, when you've discovered what kind of materials they're using, there's so many processes, there's so many different ways to use. For example, among the San Carlos, they predominantly in the last 35 years, where I've been doing my study between 1975 and 2010, 10. That 35 years, they have predominantly done twine work, not coil. They've kind of pretty much lost the tradition of coil. And I have to say at this time, twine was the technique for all tribes in the Southwest for utilitarian work that they used. So there's twine basket and there's coil. And that doesn't mean that they didn't use coil baskets, but generally speaking, coil baskets are made for sale. They're what we are interested in. This is what we collect as coil. My collection has been exactly the opposite because I've been interested in the weavers and their work, and guess what they're doing? They still predominantly work and do the baskets that their mother made or their grandmother before them. It's those work baskets, those baskets that were made for winnowing, for sifting, for roasting pine nuts, for cooking acorn mush. All of those baskets are the things that they are. That's who they are. That's their culture. They're proud of being Native American, proud of being American too. Just like we're proud of being American and being of Danish ancestry or Spanish ancestry or whatever, And so there's sometimes a monetary, but in my period of study, there's very little of that. There just is not the market, and there's not that many people that are doing it. And so it is people who are interested in their tradition. And Catherine Fowler, who was an authority, a friend of mine, authority on basketry, was at the University of Nevada in Reno and is retired now. And she states that so many weavers, that's how they define themselves. That's who I am. That's who I am. I am Native American. I am a weaver. My grandmother was a weaver. I was a weaver. All these baskets were needed for everyday use, and we estimate that probably in some places there would be some locations, particularly in California, 30 baskets that were needed in preparing acorns and pine nuts and grasses and seeds and so on. Joyce Montgomery saw Cecilia Henry, who was San Carlos Apache, and got to know her. And there was really no place for them to sell baskets. So it was, the basket was kind of between for ceremonies, for weddings or something among the Indian community. And Joyce, said, bring those baskets in. I'll buy them. And she started to give a decent price for them. And a decent price was, one this big that was like this, twined this much with these tinklers on and so on. And they had to buy this leather part, So there was expense for the tinklers and the thing for them, the leather for them. So when they got $30 for that basket, and that's what Joyce was doing for a basket about like so. It was still probably $25, plus all of their time. But so when I went to that shop, and I now had decided I definitely am interested in baskets, there were probably 30 or 40 baskets hanging from the ceiling. And an old running, I'm trying to think, cooler. And he's making a sound like that in the ceiling. And I just thought, this is so fascinating, so exciting. So I talked to her, and I had her help me pick a basket. And she's a really neat person and very likable. But, they're all Indian baskets, But she knew the person. Oh, yeah, that's Evelina Henry, and that's her mother, Cecilia, and da-da-da-da-da. And go on like this. And of course I was very then interested in that. And so I bought a basket from her. She really was, and then she would go around to the homes and buy baskets also later on. And I said, can I go with you? Oh, God, I loved that. That was so fascinating, interesting. And they'd come out, and there was never any hagger, or anything like this, or bargaining down or anything else. She either bought it or she didn't. That's all. And she says, they know, and this is so true. They know whether their work is good or not. She says they're the ones that made it. Are you willing to buy it or not? And if you're just going to be bargaining, she says they're probably not going to be interested. Then they'll raise the price. And I've seen that over and over again. Somebody walks by, say for example, a table with somebody selling baskets 30 years ago, and they'll say, how much is that one? How much is that one? The weaver will say, $3,000. Oh, that one's only $2,500. I mean, they're tired. You can't evaluate something by money all of the time. Now you come by and you say, my God, how beautiful your colors, and you use sumac on all of those. Did you dye that? Oh yeah. Well, when I talk to a weaver, oftentimes Native Americans are not as chatty as we are, which is probably a wonderful thing. So, but if you say, oh, that's a pretty basket, or oh, that's really nice. How long did it take you to do that? But those are hard questions. I don't know. I can't remember. I started, and say, are you working on one now? No, I'm not. Why? Well, it's not the right time to gather it. I don't have any materials. There's all sorts of things, and that they need to answer, and it's kind of confusing for us because we can't understand that timing is important as far as the plants are concerned. Now, some weavers are now beginning to grow some of the plants themselves. The Navajo, on the Paiute, on the reservations in Arizona, no, there's nobody doing it. So that's where Steve Tanner, comes in.
I'm pretty particular on who cuts on it because you can hurt it. You have to have very sharp shears, and you cannot use an anvil pruner. Knives, as far as I'm concerned, are a no-no, but that's just me because I'm trying to make it survive, and most of the weavers are weaving for the day.
A lot of weavers are younger and they don't have some of the background and so on, and they damage the plant beyond repair. You can only cut the plant. You can't go into the ground or you've killed the plant and so on. And they don't realize that sort of thing, but in the past they did. So we're talking about a lot of things that now are quite different. But I think I think we have to be careful now about talking, about the weavers being able to do this or to do that. It's very, very different.
Up until now, Larry Dalrymple has explained the amount of labor and education in basketry. But weavers today face other issues. Again, Larry Dalrymple.
Everett Picavit had a job with the a few years ago. Had a job with the tribe on the Moapa reservation, and the tribe. You go through the Moapa reservation when you are going towards Utah, there. And so he worked there, and he would go out because he was weaving, and I'll show you later some of his work. He was very frustrated because he's got a job that he has to do, and now he has to go collect plants. He doesn't grow them in his own yard, and they wouldn't grow. It would take years to have a crop of willow, for example, and he's got to go looking for it. So he goes to the place that he was at last year. I got this Saturday off. I got to work Sunday, So he drives to this place, and cattle have been there, and cattle can destroy a grove of willow like nothing else. Or a road has been dug through. Got to have a new road. Got to be able to get my tractor in there, on the motor home and everything else. And the drainage is totally different. And all of that materials that he had is no longer. Or perhaps somebody who needs the willow that's close to a river. And this happens so frequently in Nevada, where cattle owners need their cattle to be able to get to the stream to drink. So willows are cut down. And sometimes there's so many willows growing that it's tiresome, cutting them down. Why don't we just spray them? And then the spray, led to problems with the weaver because, like you, she's using her mouth for that first process. So, you really have got to get to know those plants and not worry about the actual weaving of the basket. You've got to be able to tell that you have sumac, as Everett was saying with some of these people, and whether the sumac is any good, because if it's chipping and so on, and that's the wrong time. You need to know when the time is, and it's very, very easy if you made a constant effort at sumac yourself, and just one test, and you have to practice on this a little bit, learning how to do two. Normally we would probably do 3 on a larger branch than 2. Splitting, but try every month, 12 times. That's not a big deal. A good sharp knife, try 12 times. Believe me, you'll tell me. You'll be able to know when it's ready, and it depends on how cold the winter was. It depends on cattle, or whatever else. It depends on frost, and I would bet, knowing some of the things that I know, the front of my house is a little shadier than the back of my house. There's probably a month difference, between the sumac that's there and the sumac that's in back. So all of those, And we ask weavers those questions. How do you answer that? It's pretty difficult.
Well, yeah, we have a lot of the Native American stores, the trading posts, or people who are claiming to be in the best interest of the people. They won't put the baskets out on the shelves that are real. They put out these imitation ones, and they don't identify them. Those who identify them are using them because they don't want to damage the real thing, but they're telling the people this was not made by our first people of the country. And I wish they would all identify that in all the stores. I'm pretty prejudiced when it comes to deceiving the public on and selling it for something that it isn't, and costing somebody else who could have used the money. And these people go out and they collect these materials, and they got to travel a long ways. There's in the Navajo Nation, there's very few places that produce adequate amount of willows or sumac. And so they're traveling further and further. It's like the Casina carvers at Hopi. The wood costs more because it's been used up, and they're going into Oklahoma to get the wood for their dolls. And now a lot of the basket weavers are having to go into Colorado, and fortunately there's enough open ground over there that they can get in there and get an adequate amount, but there's still those ladies who cannot get there, and that's the ones we're hoping we're helping the most, the ones that can't get out and get it. It's always been a thrill when we were able to sell some for the little ladies to come up and bargain and talk to you what little limited English they had, and sell them a few bundles, and then they walk away smiling, and then we would take them 2 or 3 other bundles, or maybe more than that. Then they would really get excited, and the little ladies, from kind of dragging their feet in the sand, would be stepping like a stallion would. They're just really excited that somebody gave them some, didn't have to pay for it. And we've had certain gentlemen show up on a Saturday that might have been entertaining the local brewery, and they would come and buy some of the willows for their wives, and we would charge them full price because they were trying to make mother happy when they got home. And they needed to have that little shot in the arm to remind them that they could have bought it a lot cheaper. They didn't have a hangover.
This is Hidden is brought to you by Southside 2-Bit Studios. Video interview was with Steve Tanner in 2018. Our listening audience will be happy to know Steve is still growing sumac on his property and still providing it to the weavers. Larry Dalrymple has just released another book that's coming out soon. I would like to thank Rebecca Stoneman for assistance on this project, Larry Dalrymple, Steve Tanner, and thanks to my lovely wife, Christy Tischer, being my support and helping on the show. Tune in next time.